Hello everyone, my name is Alyssa White and welcome to the Dear Journal podcast, a podcast where we talk about any and everything and freak out about life together. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and let's get straight into it. Alright guys, welcome back to another episode. I've got a good one for you guys today. I think it's an interesting topic, but today I'm going to be posing the question of, can you be a hopeless romantic in today's dating world and just kind of everything dating topics wise I'm going to be touching on. And there's a lot of different branches I could take this with, but I'm going to try to stay on track. So basically, if you don't know what a hopeless romantic is, this is somebody who's very much has rose-colored glasses on, okay? They want to see the best in everybody in the fact that they're looking for a movie romance, okay? They want that deep love. They want to be able to constantly have those expectations of these big romantic gestures, okay? And I think that I pose that question now because it has a negative connotation very much because of the way I described it, but I think that it's a spectrum because I would consider myself a hopeless romantic in the fact that, like, you know, I try to keep some authenticity with this podcast and, you know, my views on it and experience, but like me personally, I would say that I'm a hopeful romantic, and I'll talk about that in a second, but I just very much would like to have like a love like that where you genuinely care about each other. It's got some movie-like elements to it, you know, but at the end of the day, you're realistic. And the downfall with a hopeless romantic is that it's very much at their discretion because they're always looking for the next thing, the next romantic gesture to keep it going, okay? It's a little bit about the chase, but it's also just like blinded by these big gestures when you don't actually know if the relationship is good. So when it comes to these, you know, movie scene romances, okay, we're all somewhat brainwashed by them, okay? We'd all like to be Jennifer Lawrence in all of her rom-coms, but is that realistic? Not really. Are we going to bump into some random guy on the street and fall in love by picking up notebooks? No. If that happened to you, more power to you, but the rest of us over here, I don't think so. So, the thing is about the modern dating world, okay, is that everybody is somewhat disposable in a way. And it is so sad to say, and I don't like thinking about that, but you don't like one person, you go Tinder, Hinge, there's all of these other places. Instagram is literally like a dating app as well these days. And bam, you have somebody new to talk to, okay, your attention is occupied. You don't have to deal with all this other stuff, okay? You don't have to deal with the immediate issues at hand with your partner, okay? Because, well, there's somebody new right there, okay? And the problem with, I think, a lot of the dating scene these days is just that there's like an abundance, a surplus of options, of people, okay? And I know I heard, and this is not like I think pretty, like, I'm trying to quote scientifically, but I don't know where this is from, but I did hear that, like, when people have a surplus of options and are overwhelmed by that, like, they're genuinely not as happy when they pick something because they had all these other options. They don't know if they chose the right one. And so I feel like that's what's translating today, you know, like, there's so many people to meet and you never know if the next one is going to be better than the last one, right? And so you're always holding out as well. And when it comes to being a hopeless romantic, I think that so many people would like to just say they're in a relationship instead of just be alone. So they would rather take like a not good relationship, a not good supportive partner, and just have to deal with that and blindside themselves by trying to convince themselves that it's good instead of just be alone. Because being able to say that you're in a relationship has some sort of status, doesn't it? And I just think that there's hopeless romantic and then there's hopeful romantic. And I'd like to consider myself a hopeful romantic because it's like you have that desire for somewhat of a movie scene romance, but you also can take off your glasses and realize and be realistic, okay? You're not blindsided by all of this optimism all the time, okay? And I just think that people who are hopeless romantics are holding out for like that old kind of love, okay? People used to, want to choose love over these arranged marriages and everything. I'm going back like a ways, right? And nowadays it's like nobody really marries for anything other than, I would say, love somewhat. Like, you don't have to do that. There's no responsibility to marry for anything other than love, okay? I mean, if you're somebody who's marrying for like finance, okay. And so that just begs the question of, is the next one going to be better? Am I going to be more deeply in love with this other person? Do I really know if I'm in love with that person? Also, like, how do you even know, right? And everybody's like, oh, you get the feeling. I don't know. I can't really give advice in this aspect, sorry. But it's like, so many people claim to have been in love with multiple different people. And I do think you can be. But it's like, there definitely has to be different degrees to that, right? So if you had already fallen in love, or you had your first love, and everybody says your first love is your hardest one, which I think is interesting, because it's the person that you're always going to wonder like what happened, or you think about them whenever you're married like 20 years later, okay? And you're just like, it's like The Notebook. Okay, I'm sorry. Now I'm quoting romantic movies, but it's like, you went back to your first love because you couldn't find something that was as deep as that. And I think that whole idea really like will trick people into staying with people that they did outgrow, okay? And they think they won't find anything better. And so it's just this back and forth of knowing when to put in the effort, take the time to fix the problems, or talk about all these little things before they build up into problems. Or is it really time to sit down and be like, no, I do know I deserve better. There's somebody out there that's going to put in more into this and treat me the way I should be treated, right? And I think that now, okay, when I was in high school, it was like all the relationships I saw just made me not want to be in a relationship personally, because I just knew that like they were short-lived, right? And while I do think that you should date to figure out what you like and everything like that, the high school dating scene was just not for me. It just wasn't my scene, okay? But I think there's something to be said for dating people and figuring out, what you do like, what kind of partner you want in the future, okay? But I think it's hard because nobody knows at what point they should give up on it, okay? And I think if you're looking at yourself and you know that maybe their values don't align with you, but you just really want it to work out because, you've had some really good dates and you're just really idealizing this relationship, you're idealizing them, and like shit hasn't hit the fan yet, okay? So you don't really know them as well as you would like to think. And you take these little things and you turn them in your head and you make them these like movie scene situations, right? Or you still barely know them and you maybe haven't had any of those kind of situations, but you really like them, okay? And so at least I know girls do, so I'm not trying to stereotype, but they take those little situations and just think of the beautiful future that you could build together. And it's like, let's slow our roll here, okay? Let's think about what is the actual situation at hand, how are they actually acting, and then what are they saying, and then compare that to how they're acting, right? Because if it's not lining up, then I hate to break it to you, maybe like move on, because I think it says a lot about when certain people act or say one thing and act a completely different way. And when it comes to being a hopeless romantic these days, it's like a lot of people, I would say, promise, these big gestures or love bomb also. And if you don't know what love bombing is, it's where at the very beginning of the relationship, they're telling you how much they love you in like the first week. Okay, they're like, I just never felt this before. I really love you. Like, I just know. And they're doing all these big romantic gestures. And it's like, anybody would be, fazed by that, because it's like, okay, well, you're just overwhelmed with all this love. Okay, that's why they call it love bombing. But I feel like that's pretty extreme to go into that. And yet it happens a lot more than you would think, because they go in hard at first in order to kind of secure that person. And then when they know they got them, they pull back. And then that person is then chasing them. And it's like, it's all these games. So many games, okay? I think we get caught up in a lot of games these days when it comes to relationships. And I think it's very toxic. And yet it's also like inevitable in some ways, but I don't think it should be. I think that when it's the right person, you're not playing games. You're able to communicate enough to where that's not happening. Okay. But it's just hard when I think everybody thinks of everybody else as disposable. Okay. And it's like, I feel like at the end of the day, all you can really do is be your authentic self. Okay. You try to enjoy going on dates and try to enjoy meeting other people and figuring out what you like. Because if you get caught up in idealizing all these people that you're going on dates with, and you constantly find yourself like giving more and everybody else pulling back, then you might be a hopeless romantic, and not the good kind. Okay, you might be love bombing people. You might be going in way too fast. And it's just funny to me, because it's like, you go on the internet these days and you can literally validate any sort of feeling you're having. Okay, because I've seen like videos where it's like, if you love somebody, tell them, like, don't hold back any feelings, like, tell everybody how you're feeling all the time. And while there is something to be said for expressing yourself, like, don't show your whole hand of cards at the beginning. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're gonna scare them away. Okay. Like, nobody wants somebody who's super needy. Okay. That's just the situation, unless you're like insanely avoidant and then you want that, but most people know. But then that would be a very toxic dynamic anyway. But what I'm trying to say here is that it's like, try to enjoy dating, because while everybody would like to act like they can get by just fine, and that there's literally videos and things talking about how not to get attached these days, it's like, that's not the problem. Okay, the problem is not us trying to figure out how to detach from people quicker. Okay, that's not the problem. The problem is that we just all think we're gonna find somebody better, right? Like, people in the past didn't have this problem. Okay, you met somebody, your pool of people was a lot smaller that you met. Okay, and you made it work because you put in time and effort into a relationship. Okay, you didn't think, well, I just got in a fight, I'm gonna go hop on Hinge and find somebody else for next Tuesday. You know what I'm saying? Like, that wasn't happening. So you have to enjoy it, but it's like everybody wants to act like they don't have feelings. And yet that is like one of the most basic parts of being a human, is craving connection, craving love. Okay, being understood. I'd like to think when you fall in love, this person understands you probably better than anybody else. Okay, and yet we're so scared of that. Of course it's scary. Being vulnerable is scary. And yet it's kind of necessary. So I feel like all you can really do, and this is pretty much my only advice, because I'm not saying I can answer this question, this is more of just like a nice chat, but is be like authentically yourself and hope that it attracts the right type of people. Because if you're a hopeless romantic and you are just craving a person to live out these movie scenes with you, then that's all they're really gonna do. Okay, they're gonna put in that effort. You're gonna be somewhat satisfied, but you're also gonna be constantly holding on to the next one, and it's just gonna get overwhelming for them. They're gonna feel like, yeah, overwhelmed, okay? And instead, maybe just pull back, look at the situation at hand and understand that these are not realistic expectations of somebody else. Movies are movies for a reason, right? And you can hear, there's stories that people are like, oh, this is based on a true story, right? But Hollywood's Hollywood, and they will make you want to cry during The Notebook regardless of whether that actually happened or not, okay? So you have to be realistic about what you're looking for, okay? Some people love romantic gestures and doing that, and if you really want that, then that's probably the type of person you'll end up with. But don't overlook somebody who's right in front of you because you think that you can find somebody better, right? And I didn't even mean for that to kind of be like a big topic of this podcast episode, but I do think it's important because while this was about hopeless romantics, I think it's also like balancing out that other extreme of just like disconnecting from everybody and thinking that you'll never fall in love, because there's also pessimists out there who think that women and men are against each other and that you're never gonna find love because the other opposing gender is just terrible, or we like to think that the other one is the worst thing in the world, and yet you crave that attention or you crave the love from that other side, and yet we don't want to act like we actually do. So, well, this wasn't what this episode was about. I do think it's important to realize that, like, you have to be authentic in yourself in order to attract the right people. And when you do attract the right people, like, give it a fair shot, right? Put some effort into it. Stop acting like you're gonna meet your knight in shining armor on your next Tinder swipe, okay? Like, no. That's not gonna happen. And to be honest, if you're somebody who really thinks that like Tinder is the place to meet somebody, I have like some breaking news for you, that's probably not where you're gonna meet like the love of your life. And I can do a whole episode on online dating as well, because I do think that's very interesting, and there's a whole lot of games that go into that. But just when it comes to like choosing somebody, be smart with who you choose, and then take the time to get to know them. Be interested. The most interesting thing that you can do is be interested in somebody else, because in turn they'll be like, okay, this person actually cares. I want to know more about them, And if you need any dating advice, if you're just really not good at going on dates, I'd say, the most attractive thing you can do is be interested in other people. Ask questions, get to know them. Because when somebody feels like somebody else cares about what they're talking about and genuinely is interested, like, that's a good feeling, And when you make other people feel good, they're going to want to be around you, right? So if you're just shy, if you don't really like talking, like, honestly, a lot of people like talking about themselves. Depends on the day. Like, I'm not gonna, like, I'm a question asker personally, but I think that just kind of find what your strengths are when it comes to dating and then roll with that. If you are like more of a question asker, then go with that, because people will enjoy feeling like you're interested in them. But yeah, I think that I just kind of wanted to talk about these random topics of dating. And did I answer my question of whether you can be a hopeless romantic these days? Yes and no. I think that there's a negative connotation to hopeless romantic for a reason, but be a hopeful romantic, okay? Strive to have a good love in your life, but understand when it's time to call it quits as well. And don't call it quits because you think you can find somebody so much better than this person. Call it quits because the situation at hand is not good, okay? And you know what you need in a relationship, and it's not giving that, okay? So that is all I wanted to talk about today. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for listening to the Dear Journal podcast, and I hope you enjoyed diving into today's topic. If you want to continue to get updates and stay notified, you can either turn on the notifications or follow me on Instagram at alyssa.white.22. That is all for today's episode, and I hope I see you next time.